We got a full Philadelphia 76ers roster breakdown here before the 2025-26 season. That is on tap for today's Philadelphia 76ers. Now, I'm Jake Chipper. Thank you so much for joining us, tuning in to today's show. So, we'll break down every single player on the roster as of this moment after 2025 NBA free agency. But before we get into all of that, I'm trying to set a goal here on today's show, trying to stack days, get better every single week. Our most liked video from last week, August 14th, 210 likes. I want to see if the real ones, if my fellow Sixers fans out there can help us beat that record. Smash that like button. I want to beat that 210 like number here on today's show. So if you're excited for the start of the NBA, for the basketball to finally be back here in just a couple months, hit that thumbs up icon, like the video, and without further ado, let's get right into the roster breakdown. So first, taking a look at what I project to be the starting lineup for the Sixers this season. Yes, I have Quentin Grimes in there. I know he's not technically on the roster right now, but he will be. He'll be on the team. They'll sign him eventually, so I'm going to include him in this projected starting five with Maxey, Paul George, Oubre, and Joel Embiid. So let's break everybody down player by player, and then, of course, we'll get to the reserves and bench players as well. Starting with Joel Embiid, there's just not much that I think needs to be said about Joel that we haven't talked about already. If he's healthy, obviously a dominant player, MVP level player, but can he stay healthy at this point in his career? We really have no idea. You can be as optimistic as you want regarding his injury. And I've generally been an optimistic Embiid fan, someone who has supported him throughout his career, and I still do. But you'd be lying if you said there's no way, to know what's going on with Embiid. It's just impossible to know if he'll be healthy or not. If he is, he'll be great. If he's not, then this team probably not going to be as good as we hope. Let's get to Paul George, because Paul George, it's a similar conversation regarding the injuries. Of course, undergoing that knee surgery very recently. He was seen with a knee brace on, entering a nightclub about a week ago. I mean, what are we doing, dude? Unbelievable. So I don't know what the recovery for him is going to be. They're saying they're playing it safe, trying to make sure he's healthy. Even if he is healthy, I have more questions with Paul George regarding his level of play at this point in his career than I do with Joel Embiid. Because, last year, George had a good stretch in January where, 8 or so games, he looked a little bit closer to his older self. And yes, he was dealing with injuries from before the start of the season last year. So, I don't think it's completely like he has fallen off at this point. But the numbers, obviously, you can see they dropped off from previous seasons. He was not getting to the foul line as much, which is a big cause for concern. And the defense, while it was still good, wasn't quite the level we had hoped it to be. So we'll see what we can get from PG this year, if, of course, he can stay healthy. Where things start to look up, obviously, begins with Tyrese Maxey. I mean, through all the chaos and the craziness of this team, not just last year, but with what the Sixers seem to deal with every single season, Maxey's kind of been that one constant, man. And even though last year, from an efficiency perspective, wasn't quite what he has been in his career, what he had to deal with and playing with last year, of course, was injured at the end of last year as well, taking on such a high offensive burden, one of the highest offensive burdens in the league with no Paul George, no Joel Embiid, really trying to take that next step after he was the most improved player the season before. I think we could be set up for a big Maxey season this year. And I'm talking about making that jump from all-star level player to all NBA level player. And I think he's capable of that. That is the next step for him, is show you can be that Jalen Brunson type point guard, that Cade Cunningham type point guard out in the East. Someone who can really be that 1A level of player, because, to be honest, can Embiid really be that anymore at this point in his career? I think he can, but you can't count on it, right? So hopefully we can see that kind of jump for him. I think that's big for the next steps of his career. I think he can do it. What about you? Will Tyrese Maxey make an all-NBA team this season? Meaning he's one of the 15 best players in the league, according to the voters. Give me a simple yes or no down in the comments section. We'll get to Quentin Grimes here. I know I mentioned this earlier. I know he's not technically on the roster as of this recording on Tuesday, August 19th, but I am predicting, and most people are predicting, he'll be back at some point. We don't know what the contract will be, exactly what he'll sign for, but he will be back on the team. And I think that is a great thing. I've seen more and more people say, we don't need Grimes, let him go. He doesn't want to sign all this. Look, do I expect him to be what he was at the end of the year with Philadelphia, putting up nearly 22 a game with elite efficiency. I don't think he'll put up those same numbers, but to me, that just makes me even more confident that when he's playing in a slightly smaller role, you at least know one, he's going to be a really good defender, as he always has been. He's always been a good standstill 3-point shooter, but what he showed creating off the dribble, attacking the basket, off the dribble threes, doing more than he's ever been allowed to do, and he did it while shooting the ball efficiently. A lot of guys at the end of the year put up really good numbers because they're taking a lot of shots and they're not efficient. Grimes was efficient, so I like him in the starting lineup next to Tyrese Maxey with his size and his defensive ability. And then Kelly Oubre, man. Kelly Oubre is such a tough player for me to really analyze and talk about because he does bring some good things, right? We know his energy. He is a fan favorite. He's a perfect fit character-wise in Philadelphia, and he plays hard, especially on the defensive side of the ball. He runs in transition. He's athletic. He does a lot of little things that you like, right? But what's really, really holding Kelly Oubre back from, in my opinion, being a true starting player on a championship contending team is just the consistency on offense, man, and especially the three-point shot. And it's not like you're hoping it gets better at this point in his career. He kind of just is what he is. He's never been a good three-point shooter. Last year, especially under 30% from three-point range. It's just hard to have someone in the lineup with all the good things they might do when they're just that much of a liability, honestly, from beyond the arc. So I like Oubre entering what could be his final year here in Philadelphia. It could get traded at some point as well. I would slide him into that starting four role. So, Sixers don't have a true four. But honestly, ideally, I would like to see someone else step up and take this starting spot from Oubre. Just doesn't do enough things consistently on offense for me to truly be all in on him. If that is a starting lineup, which I imagine it will be for the Sixers, unless one of the other guys that we'll talk about here in just a moment steal a spot, I want you to rank that starting five for me. Of course, 30 teams in the NBA. So rank it for me 1 through 30, 1 being the best starting group in the league, 30 being the absolute worst, and of course, in between. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Now, before we get to the rest of the players on this Sixers roster, we mentioned Tyrese Maxey earlier, the franchise, baby. And right now, you can get these Tyrese Maxey City Edition jerseys from last season 50% off, down from $120 to just $60. I think it's an absolutely clean jersey. I love the design, what they did. I don't always love some of the City Edition jerseys for the Sixers. Sometimes I try to do too much. I love, the old school throwback to the Spectrum style era here with the jersey. And man, it's Tyrese Maxey, and you're not going to find a better deal anywhere else, and it's not going to last forever. So if you want to take advantage of these Maxey jerseys, 50% off, go to chatsports.com/Maxey50. See the link right below me. I'll put that in the comments and description as well. Again, chatsports.com/Maxey50. Get these jerseys 50% off today. So let's start with some of the returning young pieces that I am in particular more excited to watch this season. That's going to start, of course, with Jared McCain, who we only got to see in very, very limited action last season. But in that limited action, he was well on his way to winning Rookie of the Year in a weaker rookie class. But what he was able to do, kind of similar to Quentin Grimes in the fact that, we didn't know how good he'd be on the ball. We knew he was going to be a good shooter. That's what he did at Duke. But what he was able to do when it was really just kind of him and Maxey, or even just him out there on the floor, he was able to get to his spots in the mid-range and attack the basket despite being a limited athlete. Such a smart player who knows how to play the game the right way. And again, when you can shoot the three ball like that in today's NBA from all different angles, all different spots on the floor, you're going to be a good player. Now, hopefully his recovery off that meniscus does go well. By all accounts, it's going well so far, and hopefully he can get back out there on the floor early, and we can see continued strides and improvement from McCain, because he's another guy who you could argue to be in that starting lineup regardless. He should be playing big, big minutes. Very excited to see year 2 of Jared McCain. As I am to see year 2 of Justin Edwards, of course, a former UDFA, top 3 prospect in his high school recruiting class. Sixers pick him up in undrafted free agency, and after a slow start to the year, didn't get a whole lot of playing time, of course, as a UDFA, really came on in the second half of the season. 10 points for an undrafted free agent rookie, while also shooting 45.5 from the field, 36 from 3. Very, very impressive. And look, in today's NBA, and especially on the Sixers roster, they don't have a lot of true wings, guys you can consider 3-and-D wings who are efficient from beyond the arc and can defend opposing teams' wings. Justin Edwards can do that with his size and skill combination. And we saw some encouraging signs with him as well, attacking the basket, getting downhill, using that athleticism. And where I was really encouraged was his progression as a shooter, which was considered a weakness for him coming into the NBA. And he really did show that he has that ability. So, struggled in Summer League. I think Summer League's a bad environment for a player like him. I think he's better, surrounded by better spacing, better talent, because he's not, your one, but a really good supporting piece. He's someone I could be looking at to take that starting 4 spot from Kelly Oubre this season. And then Adam Bona as well, another year 2 player who in year 1 was better than a lot of people expected. And coming into the draft, I said, man, this guy could be good with coming out of UCLA. His defensive skill set, great shot blocker, great at defending the rim, has to foul less. And he still has a fouling issue, fouled a ton even in this year's Summer League and did a lot of that last year, but super athletic. He'll dunk on anybody. He plays with such high energy and high effort. You wouldn't know he's only 6'9", 6'10" at the center spot because he can jump out of the gym and he fights on the glass. Now, he still has a long way to go. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying he should be the starting center here or anything. Still a raw player who, again, needs to foul less and just needs to play with a little more awareness, especially on the offensive end of the floor. But, man, he has all the tools. Very excited to see him play. He should 100% be the backup center over Andre Drummond. Speaking of Drummond, we'll get to some of the returning vets. We really know what we're getting from all 3 of these guys at this point in their career. I'm not really sure why. Drummond, I get why they kept him. He had the player option, not much of a choice there. But bringing back Eric Gordon, bringing back Kyle Lowry, man, like most of their contributions here are going to be off the floor, specifically for Kyle Lowry. We know what he brings as a leader, as a Nick Nurse guy, and we know what he means to the city. He wants to retire in Philly. That's fine. But look, Eric Gordon also had a decent stretch in January. I just don't want to see him get minutes over a McCain or a VJ Edgecombe. And I don't want to see Drummond get minutes over a player like Adam Bona. And Drummond had a really tough year last year as well, dealing with injuries. So depth pieces, I really don't expect a lot of these, really any of these 3 guys, to get significant minutes unless there's injuries or things go terribly wrong. Now, who I am excited for to get more minutes, well, I guess minutes in general this year for Philadelphia, are the rookies. Of course, VJ Edgecombe and Johni Broome. Saw both of them in Summer League. VJ a little bit more limited, but Johni Broome we saw a little bit more. I'm very excited, especially for VJ Edgecombe, of course, a 3rd overall pick who you're hoping can come in and make an impact right away. We'll see what kind of role he does have out of the gate. And then Johni Broome as well showed some things in Summer League. Now, we only saw VJ for those 2 games, one in Vegas, one in Salt Lake City. Look, the number is obviously crazy. His debut was even better than his second game, and 3-point shot never really came around, but you saw the athleticism on full displays. Already, I would say, the best athlete on this Sixers roster, and he's certainly not afraid to take his shots. I love his mentality. If you haven't listened to his interview with Paul George on Podcast P, I know a lot of you probably don't want to listen to Podcast P, but it's a really, really good listen. Just the perfect player you want in your organization, high character guy. And then Johni Broome as well really impressed me with his 3-point shot, man. I said that was going to be a big weakness for him coming out of Auburn because he wasn't a great 3-point shooter in college, but shot almost 40% from 3 in the Summer League. Struggled everywhere else, though, interestingly. Couldn't really finish at the rim. You see that field goal number very, very low. And the lack of athleticism definitely did show, but excited to see what he can do as well. I think he should get minutes over Andre Drummond, too. Sorry, Andre Drummond. Trendon Watford, then, as we start to get to some of the external moves Philadelphia made in bringing in new players who weren't on this roster last season. I'm excited for what Watford can do. His time in Portland, his time in Brooklyn, he's been on some bad teams. He's a guy who I think his skill set is more conducive to a winning situation. Another guy who could potentially fight for that starting 4 role if you really don't like what Oubre is bringing and you want somebody who has a little bit of a different skill set. Now, Watford, a bit of an up and down 3-point shooter. He's kind of an interesting tweener, though, someone who can do some things with the ball in his hands. He's ran pick and rolls as the ball handler before, and he's also boys with Tyrese Maxey, which, of course, helps as well. Talking about camaraderie, Maxey has talked about that a lot on this squad. And then we'll get to the 2-way players, specifically Dominic Barlow, Jabari Walker. I expect one of these 2 to take the final roster spot for Philadelphia as we get closer to the start of the season, and we see what each of these 2 guys can offer. Barlow, a little bit of a better athlete, but a little bit longer, lankier, but Jabari Walker, a little bit more of the stockier, traditional format, but also still a solid athlete, although not quite the same as Barlow. They're both going to bring, though, defensive chops on that end of the floor, play with energy. We'll see if either of them can really develop a truly consistent 3-point shot, but they will battle for that last roster spot. And either way, if you can rebound, if you can play defense, play hard, and be an athlete, that's what the Sixers team needs there at that 4 spot. One of these two will get it. And I like Hunter Salas as a guard. Come out of Wake Forest, former 5-star recruit as well, I believe. Just did not look very good in Summer League, but he is holding on to that final 2-way spot. Don't expect to see him really at all this season. All right, that'll do it. That's the entire Sixers roster as we stand here on Tuesday, August 19th. I don't expect that to change, besides, of course, the official signing of Quentin Grimes. So, with that being said, a few new additions, of course, the rookies, some of the other guys like Trendon Watford, Dominic Barlow, Jabari Walker, as we looked at. Give me a name. Which new addition on this squad are you most excited about? I'm 100% going to say VJ Edgecombe, as I'm sure a lot of you will. And that'll do it for today's 76ers. Now, look, the season's going to be here before you know it. Preseason gets started in, just a couple months here? Training camp in about a month. So we're going to be, what did you say? A month for preseason? Oh, yeah, no, you're right. Preseason actually does start in a month. Yeah, Abu Dhabi, Knicks, Sixers. Nah, Alper's right. Good stuff there, Alper. Knicks fan. Boo. But look, it's getting started soon. That's the point here, right? So you're not going to want to miss anything regarding the 76ers as we get closer to the season. So lock us in, hit that sub button, and we'll see you next time here on the show.